Welcome to the Reprofiles, where infertility meets injustice and nothing is off limits.
We're two nurses. We're certified reproductive health advocates, and we're here to tell you everything they didn't.
From the broken systems to the heartbreak left behind, we're here to connect the facts, the policies, and the pain.
Because silence isn't safety, and we're done being quiet.
This is the Reprofiles.
Infertility, injustice, and all things nobody warned you about. To the Reprofiles, a podcast where we talk infertility, injustice, and all the things nobody warned you about. I'm Anne-Marie Luft.
And I am Elizabeth Lee, registered nurse, infertility advocate, and quite frankly, the friend you call when you need a plan or a checklist and maybe one emotionally appropriate scream into the void.
But Elizabeth, you're also running for Congress too, so you are a maybe soon-to-be elected official.
That's right. That's right. We'll add that to the list as soon as we get there. As soon as we get there. But we wouldn't even get there if we don't talk about today.
Well, I'm manifesting it. So today's episode is titled Get Me Off This Thing Called 2026, which is not really subtle because in the famous line from a movie called So I Married an Ex-Murderer, by the way, check it out. It's hilarious. Get me off this thing called love. But I'm going to say it in another way. Get me off this thing called 2026.
Gosh, I concur. Get me off this thing called 2026. Like, I didn't think it got worse than 2020. Like, just 5 years ago, we were in a different sort of hellhole as a society.
Yeah, it was weird. Did I ever tell you the story of how I was like going on the last planes out of New York City?
Do tell.
Yeah. It was March of 2020, right? And I went up with my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law to go see the Harry Potter Broadway show, Cursed Child.
Oh, fun.
And by the way, it's divided up into 2 shows anyway. So I went up there, watched it. It was great. Loved it. And everybody kept talking about, oh my gosh, the city's going to go on lockdown. And oh my gosh, this disease. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? It's fine. You're all good. So we flew out. I had taken one of my daughters with me. She was with her friends in New Jersey. We flew out of Newark, flew home, and basically like 2 days later, the whole world shut down. It was really crazy. I basically called it my escape out of New York. Anyway, I digress.
We didn't know each other then, but I'll add my own tiny story about
Yeah.
being in New York during the pandemic in March of 2020. Because I just started a new role for a very large fertility clinic that's based in upstate New York. And I was headed out to, train and whatnot. And I started hearing about this virus, disease, whatever, reminding me of like, MRSA, or not MRSA, but I'm trying to remember what it was called. But there was a while where we had to screen patients. Have you been outside the country? Have you done this? Have you done that? So I needed to go to New York and I couldn't buy hand sanitizer anywhere, like literally nowhere you could find hand sanitizer. So that was the month and time in my life, March of 2020, when I made my own hand sanitizer. I couldn't buy it anywhere. And then I recall sitting in the hotel in New York watching the news when the then president, who shall not be named, was at a press conference, I believe in Seattle or somewhere on the north, like the Pacific Northwest, saying, it's just a flu, it's just a flu, blah, blah, blah. And then, we know how that ended.
Yeah. So we
But
both
now
are
there's 2026.
Yeah. Look, we're not even 2 weeks into January. It already feels like the year is doing a number on everybody's nervous systems.
My God, really? I mean, if 2026 were a patient, right? It would be one of those charts that you look at and you're kind of like, oh no, before you even knock and open and use that hand sanitizer, right?
So like you show up for a report and you're like, oh no, why
Yes.
me?
Why me?
Wonderful. Well, today we shouldn't be just doom and gloom. This is about staying oriented, protecting access to care, and remembering that voices matter because laws are being written right now. State legislators are back in session and they're coming back with a lot of stuff. And reproductive health is a target in many of those states, but also a battleground where people keep winning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, reproductive health and freedom is a widely popular issue across our country. 8 out of 10 people believe in reproductive bodily autonomy, right? So, we're doing future planning right now with receipts
Mhm.
because what is happening in policy, um, what is coming next, and we mentioned, yes, I'm running for Congress, but boy, it's still a year away till I get sworn in. And so what we want to do is we want to talk about, not just what's happening now. And again, not all the doom and gloom, but just being real, because that's what we do.
Mhm.
What's coming next? Because I think that matters as well. And the further we get into this, the further news fatigue we will feel. And the easier it will be for us to detach, right? Because our nervous systems are not happy. But we want to talk about what some of these laws that are being made right now will mean for real families, and honestly, what you can do yourself this week that genuinely makes a difference. And we're talking small actions here.
Yeah, yeah. And as always, we're here to pull back the curtain, not just the highlight reel.
And not just the warm and fuzzy, happy, happy, joy, joy.
Happy, happy, joy, joy, happy, happy, joy, joy. We're gonna get sued. No, ma'am. Today,
No, today.
no, ma'am. Today is the seedy underbelly and practical action plan.
Yep, let's do it. Let's go.
Let's go. Do it.
So let's set the stage. This year, aka 2 weeks, 14 days exactly, has been very interesting. Interesting is perhaps not the right word. It's been eye opening. It's not what I was expecting. And at the same time, maybe exactly what I was expecting. And I think that is somehow worse.
Yeah, my bingo card is yeah.
It's like it's dobbed out. Our daubers are empty. Like,
Yeah.
and it's been 14 days.
Yeah. I think many of us are feeling a mix of grief, anger, fatigue, and a strange hypervigilance where you're waiting for the next headline like it's a jump scare. I mean, literally, I get updates on my phone from certain news organizations, and whenever I see it, I'm like, oh God, what happened? What happened now? Oh, no, oh, no.
Yeah.
And it also is making me rethink a lot of like I need to be looking at various different news sources as well.
Yeah, for sure. We all do. I think if the last 4 to 6 years have taught us anything, um, journalism is not the bastion of integrity that it once was. So we as informed citizens have to make sure that we are finding and consuming actual news, spin, left or right, like there's so many networks that seem to only want to tell their side of a story. So, like, independent journalism has never been more critical than before. Heather Cox Richardson is, I believe, a constitutional attorney, and much, much more. I find myself trying to go to sources like her. We've seen journalists like Aaron Parnas and the guys at Midas Touch, and we've seen this rise of independent news. But what it is also doing, like you said, because it's more released as it happens, you're not like, "Okay, let me go watch the nightly news tonight at 5 and see what happened," because we have these devices in our hands at all times. It is like this, like you said, like a hypervigilance. And so the very first thing that I wanna say very clearly is if you are listening or watching and you feel overwhelmed, that is normal. That means you are paying attention. It does not mean you're weak. It does not mean you're afraid. It just means you're paying attention. I saw this, like, it wasn't a meme, but it was like something online that was like the moms in this country are not okay. And then it was like 6:30 a.m. makes children breakfast. 6:45 sees that the country bombed another country and absconded with their dictator. 8:10 take the kids and drop them off at school. 8:15 grab a coffee and see that somebody's been shot in the streets. Like, this is like you said, that was a perfect way of saying, like, our nervous systems are really overwhelmed.
Yep. Yep. Also, we can't just doom scroll our way to a better future. We need a
No,
strategy.
no, we do, right? And I mean,
Mhm.
I think that you and I, that's sort of part of where this podcast was born, um, out of a desire. We saw all these attacks on reproductive autonomy and healthcare and IVF and all the things. And so, you and I, we advocated, we did all the things, but we still said we need to get information out. We're sort of your independent journalists of fertility. We'll tell you the good, we'll tell you the bad, we'll tell you where the industry does well, where they fail.
Mhm.
But as you said, we can't just doom scroll and hope that someone's gonna come and save us, because the
Mhm.
fact is very clear that no one is coming to save us. We need strategies here. The news itself is designed for clicks. Unfortunately, even those independent journalists, right?
Yeah.
We can't let the absence of good news, because let's face it, there's a lot of good still happening,
Mhm.
but we can't let what feels like an absence of good news into tricking us into thinking that there's nothing good happening, because there is. People are fighting back. Speaking of Aaron Parnas, Monday morning, I showed up down at the Capitol, the Arizona Capitol. It was the first day of the Arizona legislative session. And a friend of mine said, "Oh, if you've never been to the legislative session before, it's like, or the first day, she's like, it's like the Kentucky Derby. Wait till you see how these legislators show up. Wait till you see how they wear. It's like that first day of kindergarten. You got to get your best outfit. You got to get your class picture, right? But we
Mhm.
showed up to drown out literally a press conference that a county sheriff was giving on how proud he is to be, in lockstep with ICE. And that was what, less than a week since Renee Nicole Good's murder, and you're out there on the lawn of the Capitol saying that these are your good guys.
Mhm.
A group of protesters showed up, this incredible group of brass instrument players. They're called like Bad Cactus AZ, I think is their handle on Instagram, at Bad Cactus AZ, I believe. But they showed up. We had trombones, we had a tuba, people had all kinds of drums. One of the moms literally brought her kids like tambourine from a little, like a toddler musician set. Like,
Yeah.
right? So people are fighting back. And even in and with the weight of all the bad things that are happening, policies are also shifting in meaningful ways. They
Absolutely. We're going to talk about three, I guess, three big things today. The first one we're going to talk about is specifically for us, fertility medication access and the Trump RX. So back, was it October 16th? Believe it was October 16th. It was announced from, and we'll get into this in more detail, but fertility medications were going to be accessible through Trump RX at a very discounted rate. It's January 14th, and I have yet to read anything about it, but we'll get into that. Number two, a major IVF coverage expansion in California. So, got some good news going on there. And we have some legislative threats and victories in states like South Carolina and in my home state of Florida.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, we'll talk through those things. And then what we want to do is we want to end with exactly what you can do, because so much of right now does feel helpless. And the more action you can take, even tiny actions like sending an email to your legislator, to filling out a petition online, to making a phone call to your legislator, right? Like, so we're going to arm you with tangible ways that you can make a difference, because not only will that make a difference for others, it will make a difference for you too. And then we'll also talk about how to not freak out while you're doing it, because if you're not used to calling your legislators, which
Hmm.
I find great joy in doing, actually, I particularly enjoy calling the ones I know will not ever answer anyway. I enjoy calling them after hours and getting their voicemail, and then just leaving like consecutive voicemails of just, it's a lot of fun. So we'll teach you how to not freak out about that. So first, Anne Marie, thank you for bringing it up. Trump RX, EMD Serono, the direct to consumer discount. I have not, like you said, October 16th, there was an announcement from the Oval Office with some executives from EMD Serono, which is a pharmaceutical company that is one of the major manufacturers of the two most common fertility injectable medications, is the best way to kind of distill that down. And they talked about a direct to consumer option for patients that would drastically lower costs. But I have not heard anything about this. Have you heard anything about EMD Serono and what's being referred to as Trump RX, Henry, or any more details?
Heard nothing. I went on EMD Serono's website. I went to their news section. The last announcement about this was from October 16th, 2025. I haven't seen anything new coming our way. I Googled it, tried to figure out something about Trump RX. I got nothing. And there's just nothing out there. I'm kind of like, it's concerning because it was a promise made, and I'm afraid for all of the other things that are happening right now that it's just going to keep getting delayed and delayed. We have been waiting for this. Fertility patients don't have time to wait. Many times, this is a 1 month can drastically change a person's ability to do a cycle. And, ovaries have time. They don't have time on their hands. They actually are time limited. So for some people, this is very difficult to accept that we are still waiting. And also,
No, I mean, let's
yeah.
let's face the facts. 16 months ago,
Mhm.
campaign promise was made by in Tammy Duckworth, Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, in her fine words, this promise was made by the deadbeat dad of IVF. He promised to make IVF free for everyone who needed it, and the government or someone would pay for it. So that
Mhm.
was 16 months ago, at least, right? That promise was made. And I've spoken to real patients who believed that and waited like 6, 8 months into this first term. So, like into 2025,
Mhm.
waiting, hoping, and praying that that would come along, right? And it's been so that was that promise.
Mhm.
And then there were executive orders about how in 3 months we're going to have a whole plan. 3 months later, we had no plan. And then 3 months after that, it was October and we're in the Oval Office again, like we're going to make the meds so cheap. And these are people, these are real human beings that are waiting and hoping that an option will apply to them because
Mhm.
like it or not, there are people all across this country who need fertility care, who never even step foot in our doors. Because not only can they not afford IVF or IUI, they can't even afford the consult. Okay.
Mhm.
So we know that there are real people that are sitting there waiting for this to become a reality. And it makes me sick because honestly, it's extortion is the wrong word, but it, it's a complete violation, of people's trust. And so what we
Yeah.
do know based on public facing announcements and what's visible right now is that there was talk that this agreement would allow people to buy some of those key drugs that I talked about earlier directly from the manufacturer, which that in and of itself has potential problems. I remember when we were in San Antonio at the American Society for Reproductive Medicine's annual Congress, scientific Congress, and there was talk about this direct to consumer. You and I both know that you do not want these drugs direct to consumer because these drugs make you hyper ovulate. So if folks are getting access to these medications and giving them to themselves with no monitoring, we may have a whole bunch of octomoms. Right? Because they have to be. But in any case, so that was supposed to start in January, which is now. Um, and they mentioned discounts anywhere from 40 to 80% off of meds.
Yeah. And that's huge for the IVF community. I mean, medication costs, is one of the biggest barriers for many people. So being able to pay for a consultation, being able to pay for a cycle, or maybe they have coverage, but they don't have medication coverage because that's how insurances work sometimes is they pay for the treatment, but they don't pay for the medication. So out of pocket costs, that is a huge barrier for many people. So yeah, I have, it's again, we're halfway through the month and we haven't heard a thing. And that's really concerning to me.
Yeah, no, 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 absolutely. Like you said, as of now, there's not much information beyond what was already said.
Mhm.
The Trump RX website, which is trumprx.gov. I just checked it literally just now to be sure it was with the most latest information, and it still says coming soon.
So I mean, I guess we know January 31st is technically January. Maybe that's what they're waiting for? Question mark.
Question mark, question mark. Like, and from what listen, let's talk about because here the other frustration is like from what's been described, this plan basically has two elements to it. One is trade pricing tactics carried out by this administration to lower some US drug prices
Mhm.
because we all know we've seen tariffs and different mechanisms be very damaging to different pieces of the American economy. And so, make no mistake, this was not an altruistic move I don't believe from either party, certainly not from the administration standpoint, potentially from EMD Serrano standpoint, because they work very hard to help patients have families. But make no mistake that part of this was a trade tactic. And the other was effectively a government run website that routes consumers to direct to drug manufacturers' websites so people can buy medications without using insurance? Something like
Yeah.
that? Question mark?
I yeah, question mark, question mark. It
That
just
may be our new tagline.
yeah, question mark, question mark? Maybe we should do a whole show about that.
I think we maybe should.
Well,
Sign
we'll
in
take
next
it.
week for
Yeah.
question mark, question
Question
mark.
honestly, that's why we should end it because you never know what comes up. We have to address it. So, anyway, we're gonna pause there where you just said because on the surface it sounds like lower prices, easier access. Yay, these all sound like wonderful things, but I have about 75 million different questions.
See, that's where I'm at too, and that's where I wanna be really, really measured. I really do, because since the dawn of time, probably, growing to this very binary view of things, it's black or white, it's up or down, it's left or right. And I think that part of that binary thinking has gotten us where we are because it's I don't want you to hear this and assume it's a miracle solution because it could absolutely help some people if they can make it happen. And again, for me, if I contracted a business, if you and I contracted a business, Anne Marie, to
Mhm.
carry out a project for us, and 3 months later, there's still a coming soon page. I feel like both of us would be like, you know what? I don't feel like we're gonna get this. I don't think they're going to pull this out. Right? But at the same time, I do wanna be positive because it could help some people, but it could exclude others. I think it could create confusion. I think it has created confusion, and I think that it certainly has the potential to affect pricing in unpredictable ways, right? So if this is a trade tactic, then, okay, great, you wanna make it cheaper today, what protects it from becoming triple tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah. And it also could shift the responsibility away from insurers to the marketplace, which historically ends with patients holding the bag.
No, that is so, so true, right? And I mean, listen, even when we have insurance, we're still most often holding the bag on bills way bigger than we ever thought they would be. But so here's the practical impact question then, for me at least. For fertility patients, the immediate concern is, does it cover the meds? If so, what meds does it cover and under what rules? Those are my questions.
Yeah. And is it affordable enough to make a difference? Because a discount on a medication that starts at thousands of dollars can still be thousands of dollars.
Dollars,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think it's important, it's really, really important to point out that today, as far as I know, unless something has changed, EMD Serono has or had a medication discount program that was based on financial need.
Mm-hmm.
So did Merck, I believe. So did Ferring. So we've been talking about EMD Serrano. They make a medication called Gonal F. It's an injectable medication. It helps the ovaries have enough hormones to grow more than one egg so that they can either be harvested for IVF or you can have an IUI and have a little bit of a better chance. Their competitor is Merck. Merck makes another drug, does the same things, just called something different. They were never a part of this conversation that I'm aware of lowering prices. So part of me questions why are they not a part of that conversation? Because then there's Ferring, and Ferring manufactures a drug called Menopur, which is another key drug that's used in IVF treatment. So if it routes people to manufacturing sites, so A, why are those other companies not a part of this conversation? And if it's going to route them directly to EMD Serono's site, if that's actually how it's going to work, what happens with people who need like prior operations or step up therapy, or they have a plan that requires use of a specialty pharmacy? Like that seems like a lot of confusion.
Yeah, you said the most evilest word in America, in the world, prior authorization. I hate prior authorizations. Everybody hates prior authorizations
We do because
because
if I'm the doctor and I order you to take med ABC, it seems very silly for you to call me back and ask me, should this person take ABC?
why are you taking that? And also, whenever I had to answer those questions, they'd ask me, why does this patient need it? And I'd go, because the doctor ordered it and because they think they need it. And they're a doctor and you're not. Anyway, I digress. I
Woo!
digress.
prior auth.
Okay, what about the people who rely on insurance due to the scale of costs?
Yeah, or if they need like consistent refill timing, which we know is critical, or cold chain shipping. That's another huge important part of some of these meds have to be kept very, very temperature stable. What about reliable inventory or coordinated clinical oversight?
But also, like, what does it do to the existing manufacturer assistance programs, like the fertility specific discount programs that already exist?
Well, that's because, like we said at the top of the show, they were touting discounts between like 40 and 80%. But what nobody said was that the two major drug manufacturers already have a program that based on financial need. Again, no insurance involvement, nothing like that. They will just say, based on financial need, if you have a need, we will give you up to
Mhm.
75% off of this drug. And it used to be, I haven't looked this up lately, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but it used to be both of the programs, you either got 25, 50, or 75% off. So we would tell anybody who had any concerns about their meds, listen, if you're willing to just upload your financial information, you can apply and they'll either give you no discount or they'll give you up to 75% off based on your need. So that was already there.
Yeah, I mean, I literally just had a patient who I sent to a specialty pharmacy, and she was paying out of pocket for everything, and I sent her to a she had done IVF in the past through a different company, through a different pharmacy, sorry. And I sent her to a different pharmacy who I recommend, to some people. And she called me back and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I wish I would have known about them before because they took my financial, information. All I had to do was give them information and I got all these discounts off of all of these medications." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." That- so anyway, what should listeners do now?
Well, I think from my perspective, here's what I want people to do. I want you to be ready, but I also don't want you to bet the house on it. Because if this launches, we will break down the fine print. Okay. We will do that. And we are ready to do that. We are excited to do that. We are excited to do anything we can to make this easier, cheaper, less stressful, less painful, etc. But right now, what I would say first track your medication spend. So you're probably pretty well aware of it, but I know we're talking about fertility meds here specifically, but track what your current spend is. Make sure you really understand what your pharmacy benefit details are. So this is really important because your medical insurance it depends on the plan. Sometimes your medical insurance has a prescription drug plan, and sometimes you will have what's called a PBM or a pharmacy benefits manager, which is effectively your insurance company contracts a third party called a pharmacy benefits manager. And that third party then does the prior authorizations and they do this and they do that. And they have all this big staff and they work with the pharmacy, right? To me, that sounds like dollar signs. It sounds like a lot of people involved in a process.
Mhm.
Again, it's the back and forth between like, yes, they need it, etc. So know what your pharmacy benefit details are and don't assume anything about them. And then know the specific plan coverage structure for fertility medications. Because there again, it often depends. Like there's a lot of different scenarios where, if they would cover, maybe they'd say you have to do 6 cycles of an IUI before we'll cover that medication for IVF or something like that. And then it would also encourage folks to ask your clinic what program options exist today, right? So these discount cards we've been talking about, there's something called, I think they've changed the name, compassionate care or fertility.
Mhm.
They've got all these different programs through the drug manufacturers. And then there's also, some places will do some bundling for you. So if you buy all the meds from one pharmacy, they'll knock $250 off your bill, something like that.
Mhm.
And so that would be the best moves I would say to take in terms of if you are a fertility patient or you need to be one and you can't, find out what you're
Mhm.
currently spending. For some of you, that may be none because you can't even afford to get in the door. But do call your pharmacist, call your insurance, plan to spend a lot of time doing it, but call your insurance and know exactly what benefits you qualify for and what that structure looks like. And then make sure you know from your clinic's end what help they can provide.
Yeah, and I would also, just add on to that, it doesn't hurt to ask anything. Even if you don't, are not eligible, it doesn't hurt to ask because you know what? You might get something. So what's the worst they can say is no. So ask
Yeah.
away. I actually encountered another pharmacy which was linked to an insurer who they patient had a maximum benefit for medications, which was like $10,000, which,
Yeah.
isn't that much sometimes. But they actually told her that she was going to go over by like four or $5,000. And they actually told her, you know what, it's cheaper if you get some of these medications at a specialty pharmacy. So they filled her prescription up to $10,000. And then I sent the remaining part of that order to a specialty pharmacy and she got a discount on top of that for self-pay discount. So, it just seems like we're doing this a lot of shenanigans of
I was just gonna say crazy question, but, like,
Mhm,
that feels very convoluted.
mhm. Yeah.
Wonder why we spend more money per capita on healthcare than any
Mhm.
other country in the world, and we're the only developed country in the world that doesn't have universal healthcare.
Yeah.
Reason why is what you just said.
Mhm.
There are
Yeah.
so many intermediaries
Mhm.
found a
Yeah.
way to get a cut of
Mhm.
your healthcare, whether it be the insurance companies, the pharmacy benefits managers, the prior authorization departments, like
Bad
that.
word.
Yeah, so,
So I guess, I would say to people is if you're planning for treatment this year, do not delay care thinking that a website is going to swoop in and save you because we have no idea when this is going to happen, what is going to happen, what it entails, all of that. That's not a safe strategy for something as time sensitive as fertility treatments.
exactly, exactly, because that's the thing we talked about. So has it been 16 months, 15 months, whatever I said since the campaign promise?
Mm.
It's been another however much since the EO, and then since the just again and again. And meanwhile, there are people who will not be parents because they waited. That
Yeah.
is not alarmist. That is fact. If you
Yeah.
are over 35 and you have ovaries, every single month that goes by, your rate of infertility rises exponentially. So that's the part that makes me really mad. Okay,
Hmm.
because especially as somebody who, I have chronic illnesses and I lived through this whole should we say PA hell so we don't say that word that's a bad word prior authorization.
Yeah.
But, if we had transparent drug pricing, just transparent drug pricing, right? Not like, well, at this pharmacy it's this, but if you download this app called
Hmm.
GoodRx
Hmm.
and there's a bunch of other ones, then you get it at this pharmacy for $20. Like, first of all, that is garbage. That is garbage. I used to take a medication. It's been probably 4 or 5 months now that I haven't been able to take it because it went from 30 some dollars to like $600 a month. Like, how?
Hmm.
Why? Right? So, transparent drug pricing should be mandatory, just absolutely mandatory. And if we had that, we wouldn't need some website to work around. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So,
Yes.
like, it's almost like, and I feel like this administration is a frequent creator of problems that they then claim to be the savior of. So,
Yeah.
I said what I said.
I said what I said. That's why the the legislative side also matters. Which brings us to what we're gonna talk about. California.
Woo!
Yeah, woo.
Well, California dreaming, baby. SB
Yeah.
729. This is genuinely a huge deal. It's a huge, huge, huge win for Resolve and ASRM and all of the nurses and doctors and people and embryologists and all the folks that have been fighting so hard in California for this. And that's California's SB 729.
Yeah, man. If you live in California, you're taking a little deep breath. You're just like kind of sighing back into the chair, letting your shoulders drop a little because this really matters. It's very important.
Well, yeah, I mean, so SB 729, which it was authored by Senator, I say her name wrong probably, Menjivar, something like that. Senator Caroline Menjivar authored SB 729 in California. to expand infertility coverage requirements for state regulated large employer health insurances to include a diagnosis and treatment of infertility, including IVF.
And it went into effect for contracts issued or renewed on or after January 1st, 2026.
Yes, and there is a caveat here. Certain contracts, the CalPERS contract is not they're not required to comply with this for another 18 months.
Mhm.
So that is a caveat, but
I think that that's progress. I mean, at least we know it's coming, right? I mean, I never expect legislation to happen right away. I don't know. It's always been my thing is like, oh, it's going to happen in the future sometime. So, I mean, it is progress.
yeah, but you're right. I think it's important to make very clear that making change through legislation does take a lot of time. And
Hmm.
it takes even more time now than ever before because we're more divided than we ever have been before. The Washington Post authored a lovely graph, I don't know, in the last day or so, maybe it just came through today, but it just showed the declining efficiency of the US Congress. I think we've said this before. The last two Congresses have been the least efficient, least effective Congress in the history of the United States. This graph just did a really, really beautiful way of showing that since the days of President Obama, where like in the hundreds of laws were being passed and implemented. 2025, I believe that Congress passed 30 laws, something like that. Like, so that's not a great quick way to get things done. And I think
Mm-mm.
something else that's important to remember is that when you have things that require legislation to change, there's always fine print. So like this one for California's SB 729, um, requires large group plans to comply with this. So that's generally 100 or more employees. So that doesn't include everybody, right? So it's like we're very excited and happy for so many people in California, but we also recognize that not everybody has commercial insurance through a large drug.
Right. Yeah. Not everybody works for large companies.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to work for a large company. But also, I just want to say that it also updated the definition of infertility to be inclusive of the LGBTQ plus community and unpartnered people, which is modeled after the ASRM definition.
No, that point is huge, right? Because historically, infertility coverage has been very often coded around like heterosexual assumptions, right? Try for a year, then you qualify.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you don't have a partner with the opposite gametes that you have, like I have eggs, you have sperm, I have sperm, you have eggs, like it takes two to tango. So there's
Mm-hmm.
plenty of scenarios that completely are ignored by that type of language.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a redefinition of who counts. So
Yeah,
that's a
which
win.
is yeah, it's a formal recognition,
Hmm.
that family building exists beyond, a certain one narrow script.
Yeah, and this is how change happens. A bill becomes a law. Hey, we know the guy sitting on the steps, sitting on Capitol Hill. Anyway, employers
I knew
adjust.
you were gonna start singing, I just knew it.
I'm
I knew
just
it was
a
happening.
bill sitting on Capitol Hill. Employers adjust, right?
Absolutely.
Plans comply and people can get. This is why state policy matters deeply.
Deeply, deeply. And if you're in California and you're listening, here's some action steps that you can take. So, one, if you do have employer coverage, watch for your renewal documents. Most plans renew in January, especially with this taking effect as of January 1st of this year. If you have employer coverage, keep an eye in the mail for those renewal documents or sign into your insurance company website, like through your portal there. And typically you'll be able to find those types of documents. Ask your HR department at work what their infertility benefit structure will be under SB 729. If ask your clinic if they're using, or rather your insurance, if they're using a fertility benefits manager, right? So that's in our field. There's a couple that have been making a lot of good progress, like Progeny and Carrot and Maven, and those are all very fertility sort of women's health specific. If you're denied for something, appeal it and document it, um, because it matters. And especially with this new legislation, it's really going to open up a lot of question marks. And you're going to want to make sure that if you get denied, just appeal it and go from there. And then find advocacy groups in your state that track enforcement issues, because that's another situation. Like I just said, like if you get denied, that could simply be an enforcement issue problem. Somebody didn't know that this thing changed. And so those would be, if you're in California, those would be the things I would say to do right away.
Yeah, and also find out if your employer is self-funded, because if so, they may fall under federal ERISA rules, which can kind of complicate state mandates.
Yeah, no, correct. And then that's how we always tell patients, don't assume, verify. And
Hmm.
especially, in any scenario where insurance companies are involved, I used to tell patients, just put on your calendar as a part of your daily schedule. If you're planning on your insurance paying for your meds, it is going to be a fight. You're going
Hmm.
to have to make a lot of phone calls, stay on top of them, right? So don't assume that it's just going to go through. Make sure you verify. But even with that complexity, I think the thing that makes me, besides knowing that more people in California will have care, more people in general have care, SB 729 is a model that other states can follow. So I
Hmm.
think that that's really positive in our specific field as it relates to fertility care, fertility coverage, because not only is there a state now that's paved the way to expand access, they've also shown a recipe on how to do it.
So we're going to transition a little bit and talk about kind of the opposite energy, if you will. South Carolina, the Palmetto State.
Please.
Um, okay, so there's a subcommittee on constitutional law, and they're going to be talking about House Bill 3537.
I did not this okay, sorry, guys. You see a visceral response because decisions like this cause, like, life and death consequences. So, House Bill 3537 out of South Carolina would define a person to include an unborn child at any stage of development.
So yeah, yeah, I have many questions, but does this mean embryos? Because if so, it threatens IVF once again in South Carolina.
Once again. And that's the real risk, because the reason IVF can be successful is we acknowledge human biology first, right? You and I know we would have this conversation with folks. We'd say if you get 20 eggs, not all of them will fertilize. Not all of the fertilized embryos or eggs will make it to day 3 of development. And all the ones that do make it to day 3 won't make it to day 5. And all the ones that do make it to day 5 won't even be genetically normal. We know this. This is science. It's fact. It's proven in the 40 some years since Elizabeth Carr was born, and even further back when Brown was born. We know that IVF is successful because we play a numbers game. It requires creating embryos. Some are transferred, some are frozen, some may not be used, right? And if we're going to call, it's so hard to even wrap my head around. Because if we're going to call cryopreserve, well, if embryos are defined legally as people at any stage, you have now created a legal minefield for
Hmm.
standard IVF practice. And this is sort of
Yeah.
we've been waving the flag on this for a while now, right?
Yes. I mean, I feel like we're having the same conversation over and over again every time this subject comes up. I
Yes.
mean, I get it. I understand why they are doing this. I mean, it's kind of like they're trying to make it seem let's do the quiet. But
Right.
basically reproductive rights are being chipped away, right? It's not always banning IVF out loud. Passing definitions like this, it makes IVF impossible to practice. Why would an REI, a reproductive endocrinologist and a fertility specialist, or an embryologist stay in the state of South Carolina knowing that there would essentially be on the line?
Yeah, no, a number of years back during Federal Advocacy Day, I recall having a conversation with a legislative aide about how this was going to happen. And he was like,
Mhm,
well, that's very alarmist. It's not going to happen. And here we are again. Even when people think that they're targeting abortion, this
mhm.
broad personhood language will produce collateral damage. Okay. We know it will. We already have seen the abortion bans, things like outlawing mifepristone, how that includes miscarriage management or ectopic pregnancy management. Oh, sorry, there's a heartbeat. Now it's in your tube, which is not compatible with life, but we have to wait till your tube bursts and your belly's full of blood, and then we'll take care of you, right? Like you said, this is exactly how reproductive rights are chipped away because it seems like on the surface, if you don't have the specialty knowledge like you and I do, Anne Marie, of this field, you're like, okay, that seems fair. I mean, I think they want to paint the IVF field as being like, we're just throwing embryos all over the place. And
Mhm.
it's just, that's not it.
Yeah. No, we've already seen, patient care delayed or denied in states where laws were created, you know, to create fear and confusion and legal risk for clinicians, people having to travel out of state, people who can't afford to go out of state. It's just mind boggling. And I feel like it's the same conversation over and over again. And as a matter of fact, it was because in South Carolina, they did defeat a personhood bill back in the fall of 2025. That was just a couple months ago.
Months ago.
And here they are back at it again. I have a friend who lives in excuse me, in South Carolina. She's an embryologist. She knows that these types of laws are impacting her livelihood.
Yep, absolutely. And, it's really frustrating to watch that happen when the voters speak and then a certain group continues to try to whittle away. That happened last year, around this time, in Arizona, because in that fall election, he had passed fall of 2024, the state of Arizona passed Proposition 139, enshrining a legal right to abortion up to 15 weeks into our state's constitution. Okay. That was in November.
Mhm.
I was sitting and listening to bills being introduced in February, March that were anti abortion bills. 8 out of 10 people, now I should go back and look because it was overwhelming how it was passed. It might not have been at 80%, might have been 70%, what have you, but right after that, then we're gonna start chipping away at it again. And, like, the takeaway here for our listeners is bills like this can do and will affect IVF even if IVF is not named.
Yep.
Make no mistake.
Yep. So what I tell people in states like South Carolina, call your representatives, be concise, be human, tell your story because I think telling stories is a way to get to people. Congress
Yeah.
people are real people too. What people portray to as them on TV or in social media, they are human. And many times they're just going to listen and they just don't know. So,
And they're
you know.
also, I really think it's important to point out that they're faced with really tough choices. And we
Mhm.
as people, we don't always know
Mhm.
what what all of the information there is to be considered in order to make a decision. And oftentimes, I think, it is what it is, but, legislators are going to have to vote sometimes in ways that if it was just about them, they would vote differently, but it's not. It's about it's a whole district of people that you represent. And, well, to Florida, right, to your home state, there's this bill up SB 1680, the surrogacy and assisted reproduction bill. And I want to talk about it really carefully because the biggest concerns in my mind are in the definitions.
That's exactly what spoke to me when I read it was the definitions. So, when bills start defining who counts as a family, that's a red flag. Red flag guy, he's running around the the grass right now because he's running around for me when it comes to this bill.
Exactly. Well, I mean, the bill defines commissioning couple as intended father and mother using assisted reproductive technology with eggs or sperm from at least one intended parent, and the couple must be legally married and over 18. The only part of that bill that I support is the over 18 part. 'Cause I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know
I'm like,
any IVF clinics in the country that are routinely doing IVF cycles for 18-year-olds. Now listen, if they 18-year-old couple comes in and they have good sound counseling and they so choose, but so the only part of that I agree with is 18 years or older, but defining a commissioning couple that way is like, I don't know, I
yeah,
got with that.
right? As soon as I saw that in the definition, I'm automatically thinking it's excluding people. It's excluding a lot of people. The
Mhm.
LGBTQ community, single intended parents, unmarried partners. Some people don't want to get married,
Right.
but they still want to have children and they're still loving people. So yeah,
And then yeah, and then
I
the
was just
eligibility language is conditions like a physician has to state, like, that the intended mother how does it say? If the intended mother cannot physically gestate or gestation is a risk to her health or the fetus. So they
right.
care about the health of the mother
Mm,
if it follows their rules. But they're basically say what this says is if you as a cis female and your cis male husband need a surrogate or even want a surrogate, right? Because here's the deal. I have met at least one patient over the years. They used a surrogate because the patient had been sexually assaulted like over a very long period of time and intercourse was just not a part of their relationship because she was so traumatized. So this bill, if you live in Florida and let's say for any reason you need a surrogate, you now have to go get a doctor's note effectively that
mhm,
says it's not physically possible for you to be pregnant or if you were pregnant, it would risk your health or the fetus's health.
mhm.
I don't know. What do you think about that? Because listen, we talked about this, I think, 2 episodes ago about the dark underbelly of surrogacy. I mean, listen,
Yeah.
we recognize that surrogacy has issues.
So, a couple things come to mind. The first thing is that, there are many celebrities, there are many high powered people out there, and they use surrogacy sometimes because of health reasons, but also sometimes they do it because of their career. And I'm not going to lie, it happens that I've seen it. It's not my decision to make.
Right. It's
If
not
they
your
want
course
to
of
make that
action.
decision, if then, they're doing it actually probably a favor maybe and a positive way of bringing a child into this world. It doesn't to me, it doesn't matter whether you carry it or someone else carries it. You're bringing a healthy child into this world.
Yeah, and
So,
that's
that is a right, and we live in the US, which is a free country, yes, right?
question mark,
Still?
question mark.
Still? Question mark, question mark.
I
I
mean,
mean,
but
and also the definition, again, it says intended mother and father. By limiting the eligibility language by saying you cannot physically gestate or gestational is at risk to her health or the fetus's health, you're already eliminating, um, you know, a same-sex male couple, right? They don't have a uterus, so
for the eggs.
yeah, or any eggs.
Listen,
So
here's what's really disturbing about
yeah,
it, okay? Let's just say the quiet part out loud.
okay, do it.
This fails to reflect the reality of modern family building. Okay.
Mhm,
When our grandparents were coming up, the most common way to build a family was a man and a woman, and they got married and had a baby. Okay. But this is not 1960s America. And we all know that genetics don't make you a family, love does.
mhm.
Love
Word,
does.
word.
So at the end of the day, I think of friends of mine who've used donor eggs and are mothers because of that. I've seen, yeah, we've seen this, but it is they try to make it look on the surface like it's this nice, tidy thing.
Mhm.
But it does not recognize the reality of modern family building. And it also doesn't align with the broad medically recognized understanding of infertility and of assisted reproduction.
Yeah, and I mean, let's just kinda get toward the end, when the law doesn't see your family becomes legally vulnerable.
And I hate to add this. I mean, we'll go for a win here real quick, but I think that what's been happening in our country with how we've been handling an immigration issue that, I'm the first one to say that, you should have strong borders, you should do things to protect your citizens, but the law has defined now immigrants as not worthy.
Mhm.
And now they're vulnerable everywhere. As someone who lives in Phoenix, Arizona, I can tell you I hear of people on the daily who are hiding in their homes. They're not going to work. They're not sending their kids to school. They're having other people buy their groceries and drop them off.
Mhm.
I mean, so your point is so solid, and that is when the law doesn't see your family becomes legally vulnerable. When the law doesn't see you as a person, right? And how is it a little tangent here, but allow it, please allow it, Madam Chair.
It is allowed.
But
It has been approved.
how on planet Earth have we gotten to a point where certain people don't count? And it's not even that we got to a point, because this country has a solid history of judging people by the color of their skin. But I think the point is now we have darker forces making these decisions that then have like downstream consequences that if we don't tell you about them right now, we don't tell you about this bill and what its potential implications are, it ends up being a law. And then all of a sudden, your family becomes vulnerable. So you and your wife had a couple of kids through IVF and you're living your best life. And now they come knocking for you. If they can come after, if they can, if that can happen to our brown and black and immigrant friends. We know they're coming for the LGBTQ community. We know that that's not a part of their national ideal. It's just it's an extension of that. When the law is defining what family is, or when the law is defining what, then you become vulnerable. And I want folks to understand how serious this is, because if you've been watching what's going on with immigration enforcement in this country, you can see what happens when the law no longer counts you as human.
Yeah,
So
I think everybody agrees that we want strong borders, and no, we don't want criminals and we don't want gang members. You're right, but this is not what's happening right now.
this is not what's happening. But for something positive,
Okay,
we do
positive.
want to
Yep,
end
we
on
sandwiched
positive,
that. I like where we sandwiched that.
right? And it's out of your
Positive.
state too.
Yeah.
So Florida, I know. I'm proud of you. It happened. So Florida HB 331 addresses the reproductive health curriculum. So in the last 2 school years in Florida, your kids are out of school, so I don't, you'll have to weigh in on, but in the last few years, the districts didn't have a reproductive health curriculum. So that just meant that students missed critical education around disease prevention and healthy relationships and how to prevent teen dating violence and unintended pregnancy prevention. All of those things just spend 2 years absent.
Yeah. So my youngest graduated high school last year, so she was part of it. So
Hey, okay. She was.
yeah.
And so as a senior in high school, she did not have access to
No,
that information. That's a failure.
absolutely not. It absolutely was a failure. She also couldn't say gay. I mean, come on. You know,
That is your
that
state too.
that's what we do here. Um, I know, I mean, it's not again, I think we've talked about this in our discussion when we talked about sex ed. It's not all about having sex. It's about having healthy relationships and how to prevent teen dating violence and all of that, showing people what red flags are and how to avoid them and how to get out of a situation type of thing. Like,
Yeah, and I think
that's what it's for.
the other silver lining to HB 331 in your state is it would reverse the bans on local reproductive health curriculums so that districts can actually like meet the needs of their students, which
Mhm.
that in and of itself is education, it's prevention, it's long-term public health.
And it's common sense, which, hey, from my state, that's a miracle.
I had some common sense. My lord. Well, we have missed you guys. I know we have missed a week or so just through the holidays and whatnot. So we wanted to gift you with this extra long, anyway, but let's land this plane with some action. Okay. Because we wanted to tell you, yes, we know, we see it, you see it, we all know it. What can we do?
Call your state and federal legislators.
Ooh, I like that one. How do you find out who your state legislator is, Anne Marie?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you can go for Congress. For your member of Congress, you can go find them through congress.gov. And there's a section called Find Your Members in the US Congress. And I think you put in your zip code or your address or something, and then it'll pop up who your reps are. And obviously, you should, if you're for federal, there are only 2 senators per state. So it's like already a given. But to find your rep, that's how you do that.
Yes. And for state-led legislators too, most of the states have, if you go to your state's, like, main website, they will have, or you can even type in, like, your state, uh, "Find my state legislators," and you'll find different ways you can put your address in, and it'll not only tell you, we think when we think about this, we're like, "Oh, your senator and your representatives federally," but you also get state senator, state house members, you get board of supervisors, corporation commission, you get a state treasurer, you get a superintendent of public education, you get a county attorney. Like there's a lot of different roles that
Mhm.
matter. And a lot of what we're seeing today legislatively is as a result of a lot of hard work on the opposition's standpoint over the last 10 years at installing loyalists into those school boards and the things like that, right? So for state legislators though, most of them are gonna have some sort of direct contact tool, and then for federal, I love, 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 love the app called 5 Calls. It's the number 5 calls, the 5 Calls app. You download it on your
Okay.
phone, you put your zip code in, and it populates who your senators and reps are, and
Okay.
it gives you issues that you may or may not care about. So, like, let's say you care about reproductive autonomy, and you probably do because you listen to our show. You can click on that, and then it will show like what's happening in that realm and a script you could use to contact your legislator. So, let's say,
Hmm.
like, for example, let's use the immigration issue because we were just talking about it and it's a little bit more top of mind. Let's say, you see some immigration enforcement happening that you don't feel is right. It will give you their phone numbers, you can click right on the number and then the script will pop up. So if you're nervous, which I get it, the first couple times I called legislators back in the day, I was like, very nervous. But anyway, so that's how you can engage with your federal lawmakers. And then for your state legislators, looking for those direct contact tools, like for you, the Florida's House and Senate website, Arizona's House and Senate, whatever state you live in.
Yeah. So here's something that, I think I fell into, is being scared to call. Some people are very hesitant. Like they might think, "Oh my gosh, am I going to be put on some sort of list?" And then they're going to be knocking on my door, and oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
Yeah. And no, not for contacting your lawmakers. That's civic engagement. You don't threaten anyone. You do not harass anyone. You do not do anything illegal. You are allowed to exercise your rights to petition your own government and your own legislators. You are.
Yeah. And I think everybody needs to remember this is they actually work for you. You are paying me, you, everybody. We're all paying their salaries and their healthcare. You have every right to say, "This matters to me. Can you please listen to me?"
And your voice matters. And like Anne Marie said earlier, your story matters. If you call your legislators and you spew a bunch of data at them, most likely that's going to go in one ear and out the other. But just think about a story that you've heard recently from somebody that you can't get out of your head. That's what happens when you story tell. And so give your story, share your story, because if you don't speak up, who will?
Yeah. Here's what we know. There are factions that are pushing extreme ideas, but that's not real life and you know it. And you live in a neighborhood, you live in a city, you know that not everything that's being pushed is true. If people are starting to see through this.
They are, and we'll be here all year long bringing attention to these things, to reproductive health concerns, to successes, to failures. And as we talk about, we talk about injustice too. So that often brings in non fertility topics. But at the end of the day, we're here to show you the full picture, the left, the right, the center, the whole thing, because we believe in your own autonomy to make your own decisions. And if I believe in your own autonomy to make your own decisions, I don't have a need to spin you something. I can present it to you and allow you to make your own choice.
Yeah. So here's to a new hope in 2026.
And here's to getting through 2026 with our humanity intact, which we can do.
Yes. We love you. We mean it. Now go drink some water.
And call your legislators. See you next week.
Absolutely.